Disclaimer: I am well aware of the fact that Silver Eyes novels are considered not canon to the games. However, the point of this series is to explore the lore of Freddy's, all of it, and so I see no reason not to try to fit the books into the existing timeline, given that there is notable overlap between the two franchises anyway, and they seem to influence each other as the story develops. So, welcome to this FNAF book club. So let's have a look at the first Freddy's novel, The Silver Eyes, released in December of 2015, and see how it can be fit into the timeline. Also, spoilers ahead for the book series, so enter at your own risk. So, Chapter 1, we meet our protagonist Charlie as she returns to Hurricane, Utah. It has been 10 years since the incident which caused her friend Michael to die at the age of 7. Charlie notes she left in July of 1985, so this is not the 1987 massacre. This is the untold story of the first murders, as the trailers for this book implied. We also learn that it is currently summer, and that as it has been 10 years since 1985, it is now 1995 for the setting of this novel. We can also plot locations, as it turns out that the Hurricane Utah may in fact be inspired by a real location in America, and as we see in the Freddy Files books, which, while not considerably meant to be canon, there is an actual map depicting the real life location, so we can use this map for plotting of locations, and this will become useful to us later on down the line when we look at Fazbear's Fright. So Charlie notes that in the town centre there is a movie theatre. Turning left takes you out of the town towards Charlie's childhood home. Charlie thinks how she was only 3 years old when she first arrived here, but then admits to us that her memories were a blur. Now this is an important detail going forward, as Charlie's memories cannot be relied upon as concrete evidence, as we will find out later in the series. So Charlie visits the decaying home she once lived in and visits all her old toys that are still there: Theodore, Stanley, and Ella. There are 3 closets in her bedroom, Ella being in the smallest one, the middle one having a microchip with hair under the door, which again is further foreshadowing of the plot twists that we get later in the novels, as well as the memory of a character named John, who would imply to Charlie that she will one day grow into this closet. Charlie also visits her father's workshop in the backyard and has memories of a scary endoskeleton that was present while Stanley, the unicorn, was being built, and also finds evidence of a tripod having been placed and an elbow joint for a suit found in the gravel, which would go on to be the start of evidence that this site has not been entirely abandoned by someone. As night falls, Charlie goes to the diner, which is near the town centre, and on the way she remembers John and how in kindergarten he took the blame for her when she broke something, and this would lead on to him being allowed to visit her home and see her toys for the first time. This is noted to have been 2 years before the incident, so that would place this around 1983. So in the diner we meet the friend group. Jessica, John, and Carlton are all present while the others have yet to arrive. Jessica has been living in New York. Carlton and his family remained in Hurricane, and his dad had ran for mayor 2 years previous. They plan to stay in a motel that is further down the highway. Carlton is revealed that Freddy's was built over after the incident, and they plan to go and see it. Interestingly, before they go, Charlie is notably able to dent the car bonnet just by sitting on it, which is odd given that she is supposedly a 17-year-old girl and not even very large. So the fact that she has the considerable weight to do this may in fact be more foreshadowing of her true nature. Charlie and John would also share a memory of a mean kid called Billy who became stuck on the merry-go-round with their friend Marla. And John also notes having a memory of a yellow Freddy Fazbear. Jessica would also apparently talk to Bonnie as a child. Now what's interesting is that as most of these memories here are not solely based on Charlie's recollection but on the actual memories of other people, these can more credibly be taken as having actually happened. So, chapter 2, we go to the site of Freddy's, which has been built over by a derelict mall which has a patrolling guard. Entering through a back entrance, the group pass through a small corridor which is lined with kids' drawings, and then enter the main dining room, which has silver and white tablecloths, and a merry-go-round which is stated to be in the far corner next to the stage. There's an arcade connected to the dining room. To the left of the stage is a corridor near the carousel, short corridor leading to an office where Henry would conduct his work. There is also a kitchen connected to the main room that is somewhat close to the arcade, as the groups that separate bump into each other when exiting both of these rooms. On the opposite side of the hall from this is a corridor that leads to Pirate's Cove, where Foxy is revealed to have been out of order since at least 1985. Given the fact that we're noted that he has always been a bit twitchy, and as I've covered in previous videos, he may have been involved in the original murders incident in some way, and therefore that may lead to the explanation as to why Foxy is in fact out of order. After exploring Freddy's, the group leave and Charlie and Jessica return to the motel, where Jessica reveals to Charlie that a year previous she broke the heart of a boy named Donnie. Chapter 3. So the next day Marla arrives with her brother Jason, reveals that she has visited Charlie when they were both 12, and they go to the diner to meet Lamar, who has also arrived. It is noted that 3 months after the incident, Jessica moved to New York. Her father returned for a funeral 2 years later, but didn't bring her. During 3rd grade, so when the group would have been 8 to 9 years old, Lamar left for Indianapolis. At the end of the year, John also left Hurricane. This would place them leaving at least a year after the incident, so Lamar leaves presumably around the winter of 1986, and John by the summer of 1987. We learn Marla lost her gran while she was 6 years old, and when her brother Jason was 1, so in 1984, meaning Jason was born in 1983. The group head to the elementary school, which is 5 minutes away from the diner. Michael's parents, Joan and Donald Brooke, award a scholarship to high school senior Anne Park and mark the 10-year anniversary of the incident, which is noted to have occurred over a few terrible months. It is also noted that besides Michael, 2 girls and 2 boys were also victims of the original murders. The other families have since left town, and so remain a mystery. After the memorial, Charlie and John walk 3 miles to the outskirts of town in Charlie's old house. Notably, a few abandoned houses are also in this area. Charlie has more memories of the creepy endoskeleton and theorizes on whether the memory is in fact hers, her father's, or that of the endoskeleton itself, which is further proof of Charlie's memories being somewhat unreliable. She also remembers Henry creating the Freddy's gang in the attic. While in the workshop, it is noted all blueprints and tech have vanished, and there is evidence the room has been used, as the toolbox itself appears to be in pristine condition, considering that the rest of the house and workshop are literally crumbling around it. There is also evidence of what may in fact be a trapdoor underneath the workshop. John recounts a memory of the suits going wild after Michael was taken. He saw a costume with dull, dead eyes inside the socket. Now this leads us to our third strange mystery of the books here, as the only character that we know of that has dull, dead eyes is Henry. So why would Henry be the one taking the child, especially considering that the suit taking the child was Fredbear, not Spring Bonnie? So there is a strange mystery concerning that no one seems to have touched upon. It's also possible that this may explain in some way why the crying child fears Fredbear but not Spring Bonnie as well. This book is also our first instance of a reference to what would later become known as Remnant in the series, as the mention of people's ghosts not being considered actual ghosts, but memories that linger whether there is someone there or not, seems to imply the existence of some form of sentience left behind by living beings. So as night falls, the group return to Freddy's and find a small door next to the stage stairs, which are filled with screens. And it is notable that somehow this building still has power, despite the fact that it has been condemned and built over. Jason notices that the pictures on the wall appear to be capable of moving and changing what's on them. The corridor leading to Pirate's Cove would be revealed to have 2 bathrooms within it. Pirate's Cove also has a small control room, similar to the one under the stage, that can see the party rooms, hallways, an office and a closet on its security screens. While exploring the pizzeria, Foxy cuts Charlie's arm, and the group leaves and go to a 24-hour drugstore which is near Freddy's on the main road. We learn Marla's parents are divorcing, and also that Charlie apparently is not a person who visits doctors and seems to have never had any serious medical issues which would require her to seek medical help. So the next morning we find that Charlie is remembering that a first site existed prior to Freddy's. Charlie and John would work out the location and would drive north to reach New Harmony and find Fredbear's family diner. It appears to have black and white diamonds for a floor, red checkered cloths, and a brownish yellow rabbit and bear mascots, which would be worn as either a suit or as an endoskeleton. This site itself was very, very low maintenance, as beyond the main hall there was literally a kitchen on the right and a closet behind the stage with no other adjoining rooms. Charlie would go on to have 3 memories while in this place. She remembers having a twin brother who was taken by a rabbit mascot, leading to the site being closed and the family moving. A second memory of her and her brother learning about the spring locks from Henry, and a third memory of her first day after her mother left, where a toy dog was present in Henry's workshop. Later that night, the group would once again return to the Freddy's pizzeria, but this time they are blocked by Dave, the security guard, who has baggy clothes, a grubby look, and has an odd expression and seems almost vacant or distant. He also notably has strange scars visible on his neck. He reveals Freddy's was built over by someone with sentimental connection to the location. Its reputation, however, prevented projects, so it was built over by a mall that was never finished, as it had such a dark aura that it drove people away, and therefore the mall itself was not even completed. When Dave enters the pizzeria with the group, the suits go haywire. It is noted that a hallway to the right of the stage, next to the merry-go-round, that links to the arcade and the party rooms apparently, which kind of contradicts the layout so far, but it's entirely possible that in the confusion, the characters either thought they were going to the left or the right, or they are simply facing a different direction from the stage, and therefore the direction that they are perceiving as right or left is therefore switched. Pirates Cove is, however, said to be on the opposite side of the hall from this corridor, and also within Pirate Cove there is a second hallway which leads to more party rooms, and also one of the hallways leads to an office where a closet holds the yellow Bonnie suit, which Dave would then put on and in the confusion grab Carlton as the rest of the group flees the building. Fleeing to the movie theatre in the town centre, the group find Officer Dunn, who escorts them back to Freddy's to find that the door that they have been entering through has now been sealed and padlocked. He informs Nora on police dispatch to call Clayton. The group goes to Clay's house, who is the sheriff and also Carlton's father. We learn that Carlton went to school one town over after the incident in 1985, and that also during the time of the incident, Clay was still a detective, and that arrests were made but no bodies were ever found. While staying the night at Clayton's, Charlie has a dream of the twitching endoskeleton suit, which she believes is Foxy, as it approaches her at night in the house during a summer storm before Henry appears and sadly deactivates it. We also learn that people suspected Henry of the murders and that he actually used one of his own robots to end his own life because of this. It is also noted that Charlie notes that during this memory of the endoskeleton, she for the first time does not feel safe around her father. The following day, it is noted that a big storm is now approaching the town. Clay's wife Betty is the district attorney for the county, and upon learning of Carlton's disappearance, she immediately flips out and sends Clay to figure out where he has went. Clay also lets slip during their argument that while investigating the original murders, he saw Michael's blood streaked across the floor where he was dragged from, but this is never again elaborated on. Officer Dunn is sent to Freddy's to investigate and finds that the door is now unlocked. He remembers that he was 10 when the tragedy occurred and 11 when the incidents fully ended. His mother cancelled his birthday party at Freddy's after the first disappearance. Turning right from the stage, he enters a hallway which has an office at the end. Inside is a desk and cabinet, and the yellow rabbit appears and stabs him, ending his life. Now, as this is notably different in the graphic novels, it is entirely possible that details within the graphic novels may not be as accurate as we would like them to be, and therefore they can fall into the same category as the Freddy files, where any data we can glean from them may or may not be entirely accurate. Charlie and John return to the old house, where Charlie has a memory of vaguely returning with Aunt Jen, and we find out that Henry and his wife took photos. Henry is notable for having dead eyes, just like the Freddy that we saw in John's memory. And Charlie has the memory of the blank-faced robot standing within a pool of blood when Aunt Jen took her from school after Henry's untimely death. Another photo shows Henry in a golden Fredbear suit with a rabbit next to him, worn by an unknown individual. This leads John and Charlie to go to a library near the elementary school from earlier to find answers. We meet Harriet, the young librarian, who is from Indiana and recognises the name of the Freddy's franchise, implying it is far spread enough to have branches in Indiana, but she has no recollection, it appears, of the incident, or it is just clearly not something people talk about, or that Harriet herself has just never heard of it. Now, we learn that Charlie's birthday is May the 13th, and that she remembers moving to Hurricane at the age of 3 years old. So if she turned 7 in 1985, then by subtracting 4 years, we get 1981 as the year she would have been turning 3. She has a further memory of the incident of her brother being snatched and her mother being dressed as a princess, leading up to the closing of Fredbear's and revealing that the incident appears to have happened on Halloween. Now, the odd thing is that Charlie finds a news report of the snatching, and it is noted to have occurred on November 1st, 1982, a whole year from when it should be. So we see the issues arising in the dating versus Charlie's memories, which I believe is an intentional thing by the writer to make us question whether or not Charlie's memories are accurate. We also discover that Henry was joint owner of Fredbear's and Freddy's with another man. So Carlton wakes in a storeroom trapped within the suit of a torso of an unknown blue animal suit. One of the first suits, as Dave would go on to explain. Another suit, which is green, also exists nearby. Dave gives detailed information on how spring locks would affect a human body, implying it is more of a remembering than an imagining. He also seems to relish the idea of the process. We notice that he has scars covering his entire body, which are perfectly symmetrical, which raises a slight question as what we know about spring lock. Why would someone end up with almost decorative, beautiful looking scars after the process of spring locking, when from what we have seen it is anything but delicate? It is extremely graphic. So upon discovering that Jason has went back to find Carlton alone, the rest of the group return to Freddy's and find that someone has now welded the entry door shut, which raises the question of, if the door was welded shut on the outside, there must be a second entrance, right? Because how else would the person who welded it have got back into the building? And considering this is the back entrance, there must be a front entrance somewhere. So during this sneaking into Freddy's via a skylight that goes on, Charlie remembers Sammy in the closet at Freddy's, which doesn't seem to add up considering that everything we've learned so far points to the fact that Sammy was abducted in Fredbear's, leading to them moving, so why would he be in Freddy's in the skylight closet? It is also noted that the facility itself feels like it's alive, furthering the concept of remnant, which would develop further in the franchise. It is noted that upon exiting the skylight closet, taking 2 turns in a corridor will help you to reach Pirate's Cove. A hallway exists near the entrance, which is also near the arcade and the party rooms. Carlton notably hears voices whispering while in the suit he is in, and then he becomes the first to witness Golden Freddy. As chaos ensues within the pizzeria, the suits run amok, and we learn from Bonnie, of all characters, that while the animatronics are pursuing people, that they actually do in fact appear to breathe, and they also smell like rot coming from their breath. There is a hallway we note that is left of the stage. Carlton is in a room at the end of this hallway. Doors to the kitchen are also located within this hallway. The corridors opposite this has party rooms and the skylight closet, with an office opposite from the closet, which is also notably weird because this corridor appears to run parallel to the Pirate's Cove hallway. Dave reveals to us that the kids were put into spring suits in order to kill them during the incident. We also find that when Dave is hit with a pipe and knocked out, he is notably heavier than he should be for a skin and bones person, and considering the fact that he was considerably stronger than Officer Dunn, a young man basically in the prime of his life as a law enforcement officer, and the fact that Dave also appears to have a blank, unmoving stare, like a blank canvas, when not talking to the group, it appears that there is something definitely off with Dave. If not a mental disorder, then it is entirely possible that, given what we know further on in the franchise, Dave is maybe in fact not even a person but a robot. Dave is also notably able to observe Charlie and see that she is not normal, and he even calls her something beautiful, alluding to the reveal that we get in later games of her true nature, which is interesting enough because nobody else seems to be able to do this. He also reveals that the spirits forget things, and they see the characters as nothing more than adults and as a threat to them, and claims that he is safe because he is one of them, which may actually be subtle foreshadowing to the fact that he is in fact a robot duplicate and not himself. We do later see that Bonnie attacks him while he is alone in the office, but he then just turns up later unharmed and ends up being spring-locked. So what happened in the office with Bonnie? Was he actually in any danger? Why did Bonnie not do anything to him? We do end up with the story concluding with him being dragged off by the suits after being spring-locked, leaving his fate a mystery, but presumably him being killed. Play also reveals to us that during the incident, Pirates Cove was notably a mess, and he remembers Henry being suspected and also being incoherent under questioning. Then Dave, aka Afton, was seen to be given perfect opportunity for each disappearance and had both the yellow suit and ranting notes of both jealousy and worship of Henry and his work. But as there were no bodies, Afton was able to walk free, despite the fact that everyone pretty much knew that he did it. And then it was noted that in the past 6 months, Dave showed up in background checks. Interestingly enough, during all the chaos, Foxy is seen to be protecting Jason, as he is still technically a child. We also see that Golden Freddy is able to move without an endoskeleton and can appear and vanish like a ghost, which is strikingly different from most of the other possessed characters that we see in the franchise. So the group depart Freddy's as the sun rises on the next day. A bus station is noted to exist in the town. Charlie also visits a graveyard which is near Burke's house. We also learn that Charlie also has a memory of Henry's at Fredbear's watching crows peck, which appears to be the furthest back in the timeline, as this appears to have, according to Charlie, been before everything. So this was before even Fredbear's became a thing. So as this video is beginning to run on a bit, I'm going to break off here and continue this in a part 2 for this installment, where I will take the existing Freddy's timeline that I've created and then attempt to plug in the Silver Eyes information into this timeline to see how it all fits together.